The moving truck had barely pulled away when the first blow landed not a fist, but a packet of papers slapped against my front door like a scarlet letter. I hadn't even unpacked a single box before the queen of the neighborhood, HOA Karen, waddled up my driveway with her clipboard clutched to her chest, and a grin so smug it made my stomach twist. "Welcome," she sneered, though her tone dripped with anything but warmth. "I see you've already racked up violations." She shoved the packet into my hands, and I stared at the list, incredulous. Grass height too long, mailbox color incorrect, blinds visible from the street, even unsanctioned moving truck parked in public view. My belongings weren't even inside yet, and she was already trying to bury me under fines. I laughed at first, thinking it had to be a joke. But Karen's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "We take pride in this community," she snapped. "And we won't tolerate rule breakers. Pay these fines by the end of the week, or we'll begin lien proceedings." Behind her, 2 board members nodded meekly, their clipboards shaking in their hands like terrified soldiers under her command. Neighbors peered from windows, pity flashing in their eyes. Clearly, I wasn't her first victim, just her newest target. That was the shocking welcome to my so-called dream neighborhood. The truth, however, was very different from what Karen thought she saw. I wasn't just another homeowner. I was an attorney, one who had spent the better part of a decade specializing in property law and corporate governance. I'd fought against real estate fraud, corporate overreach, and yes, corrupt HOAs. I had moved into this neighborhood not just for the house but for the challenge, after hearing whispers from friends about the tyrant who ran it like a personal empire. What Karen didn't know was that every violation she tried to slap on me only gave me more ammunition to dismantle her throne. That night, instead of unpacking boxes, I sat at my kitchen counter flipping through the HOA bylaws, which I had requested from the realtor weeks before closing. The contradictions leapt off the page: rules that violated state law, clauses that granted Karen unilateral power without board approval, dues that had been raised without recorded votes. It was a goldmine of corruption, and she had handed me the keys to expose it. My fury transformed into focus. If Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one, but it wouldn't be on her terms. The next day, I appeared at the HOA office with a calm smile and a recorder in my pocket. Karen was there, of course, seated behind a desk littered with binders and stamped envelopes, her throne of intimidation. "Oh, it's you," she said, smirking. "Here to pay your fines?" I leaned forward, dropping the violation packet onto her desk. "Actually, I'm here to request a full accounting of HOA financials. State law requires transparency, and as a dues-paying resident, I have every right to see them." The smirk faltered, if only slightly. "We don't just hand those out," she hissed. "You'll need board approval." I clicked my recorder off and smiled wider. "That's not what the law says, and you just admitted to withholding records." "Thank you." The room froze. The 2 board members glanced at each other, panic flickering in their eyes. They weren't accomplices, they were hostages. And in that moment, I realized the tide had already begun to turn. The twist came a week later at the monthly HOA meeting, which I attended armed with evidence. Karen strutted in, her clipboard like a weapon, prepared to humiliate me in front of the crowd. She opened with her usual thunder, railing about new residents undermining community values. But before she could finish, I stood and projected copies of the bylaws and financial irregularities onto the screen. Gasps rippled through the audience as I pointed out the illegal clauses, the unapproved dues increases, the tens of thousands of dollars marked as landscaping that never appeared anywhere in the neighborhood. Karen's face drained of color, then flushed crimson as she tried to shout me down. "Lies, fabrications. He's manipulating you all." But her voice cracked under the weight of the truth, staring back at her neighbors. Then Harris, an elderly resident who had lived there since the subdivision was built, stood and raised his voice. "I always wondered why my dues doubled." She said it was for road repairs that never happened. "This explains everything." Others chimed in, stories spilling like floodwaters: fines for flowers, threats over Christmas decorations, threats of foreclosure for missed payments that turned out to be made on time. The meeting turned into an uprising. For the first time in years, Karen wasn't in control. She was on trial, surrounded by the very people she had bullied. When the vote came, it wasn't even close. By overwhelming majority, Karen was removed as HOA president, stripped of her position in front of everyone she once ruled over. Her screams echoed down the hall as she stormed out, papers scattering from her clipboard like the ashes of a burned-out empire. In her place, a new election was held. Neighbors urged me to step up, and though I hesitated at first, I realized it was the only way to ensure lasting change. By the end of the night, I was elected HOA president, the same office Karen had wielded like a whip, now handed to me by a grateful community. What followed was nothing short of transformation. Fines were reduced to fair levels. Dues were audited and adjusted. Transparency became the norm. Every resident could log in and see exactly where every dollar went. Instead of hostility, neighbors began working together, planting community gardens, repainting fences, building playgrounds. The fear that had gripped this neighborhood dissolved into laughter, shared meals, and late-night conversations on porches. And yet, the image that sticks with me most isn't the victory or the laughter. It's Karen's face in that moment when the deputies escorted her out of the meeting, her power gone, her lies exposed. She had built her kingdom on intimidation, and it crumbled the second people chose courage over fear. When Karen stormed out of that meeting, her clipboard scattering papers across the community hall floor, many of us thought it was over. Her empire had collapsed in a single night, her grip shattered by the truth. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who accepted defeat quietly. The next morning, emails began circulating, written in her shrill and indignant style. She claimed the election was fraudulent, that I had manipulated residents with doctored evidence, that the community had been hijacked by an outsider. She even threatened lawsuits, attaching PDFs of legal notices she had clearly written herself. The font mismatched, the formatting was off, but the venom was unmistakable. At first, I ignored them. Bullies lash out hardest when they know their power is gone. But when she started sending letters to county officials, claiming I had illegally taken control of the HOA and embezzled funds myself, I knew she had to be stopped once and for all. This wasn't just noise, Anna Marie, it was defamation, an attempt to claw back power through sheer lies. What Karen hadn't counted on was that once people tasted freedom, they weren't about to hand it back. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up now stood with me shoulder to shoulder. Harris, the elderly resident whose dues had doubled under Karen's phantom repairs, marched into the county clerk's office with me to file affidavits. Mothers brought binders of emails Karen had sent, threatening them with foreclosure. A contractor even showed up with invoices proving Karen had pocketed payments for jobs that were never done. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. The twist came when a man none of us expected stepped forward. It was Karen's own treasurer, a timid man named Doyle who had always sat quietly at her side during board meetings, scribbling notes while she barked orders. He requested to meet me privately one evening, his hands trembling as he slid a flash drive across my kitchen table. "I can't keep covering for her," he whispered. On the drive were financial records, emails, even recordings of Karen bragging about her scams. "They'll never find out. I control the votes. I control the money. These idiots will pay whatever I tell them." Her voice hissed through my speakers like poison. By the time the county prosecutor heard the evidence, they didn't just have enough to sanction Karen, they had enough to indict her. Fraud, embezzlement, harassment, forgery. The charges stacked up until even her most loyal defenders backed away in disgust. The courtroom was packed the day her trial began. Neighbors filled every bench. Reporters lined the walls. Cameras rolled. Karen entered in a pressed suit, her hair styled, her smug smile pasted back on like armor. She tried to stare me down as if her glare could undo everything. But the weight of evidence was too heavy. Doyle testified first, his voice shaking but steady as he detailed how Karen had ordered him to falsify ledgers and shred invoices. The prosecutor projected her emails on giant screens, her words damning her more than any witness could. When it was my turn, I stood and told the jury about that first day the violations slapped on my door before I unpacked a single box, the harassment, the threats, the lies. I told them about the meeting where the community rose together for the first time. And then I played the recording of her bragging. The jury's faces hardened as they listened. Karen tried to fight back on the stand. She painted herself as a martyr, insisting she had been protecting the community from degeneracy. She accused me of being a plant sent to destroy her. But every lie crumbled under cross-examination. By the time the prosecutor finished, Her arrogance had deflated into desperate babble. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. When the judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison with mandatory restitution to the community, cheers erupted in the courtroom. Karen's shrieks echoed down the hall as deputies led her away, but no one flinched. For once, her voice had no power. The weeks after her sentencing were some of the most inspiring of my life. Without Karen's shadow looming, the neighborhood blossomed. Transparency replaced secrecy. We held open meetings where everyone had a voice. Budgets were posted online, every expense visible. Dues were lowered, and for the first time in years, residents actually saw where their money went into playgrounds, street repairs, and landscaping that really happened. People who had once avoided each other now shared meals on porches, their laughter spilling into the night. The HOA didn't just survive, it transformed. Instead of a dictatorship, it became a community. And though I never wanted to be in charge, I accepted the presidency not as power but as responsibility. To prove that leadership meant service, not control. But the most powerful moment came months later, when we dedicated a new community garden on the empty lot where Karen once staged her ridiculous inspections. Children planted flowers, elders built benches, families worked side by side. At the entrance, a wooden sign stood tall, carved by Harris himself. It read, "Community, not control." As I stood there with my neighbors, watching sunlight spill over the blossoms, I realized Karen's downfall wasn't just hers. It was proof of what happens when ordinary people decide to stand together, to stop bowing to fear and start demanding truth. And so I'll leave you with this. Do you think Karen's punishment was enough for the years she stole from us? Or do bullies like her deserve even harsher reckoning? Share your thoughts, because justice doesn't end with one voice. It grows louder when every voice joins in.